Breakfast Live on GTV, and we are settling down to have another conversation with our friends from the Minerals Commission. Last week we were looking at industrial minerals. We got to learn that includes stone and sand and all that. This week there was a story in the Daily Graphic that I found particularly interesting about a warning that if we are not careful we might start importing stones. And luckily the Minerals Commission are here. Perhaps even as we have this conversation again on industrial minerals, they may find some answers for us in addition to the pack that they've already prepared to serve us at breakfast this morning. The man who is going to make this conversation possible from the minerals side is in the person of Mr. Emmanuel Bukari. He is Assistant Manager, Small Scale and Industrial Minerals of the Minerals Commission. Mr. Bukari, once again, welcome.
Thank you.
So last week we had quite an insightful conversation about industrial minerals, and we're talking about sand, we're talking about stones, and what the business outlook was or is like for those who want to get into that. We spoke about licenses that you could get for mining industrial minerals, and so just recap some of those things to us, the benefits of these industrial minerals, and then how we can protect them from, encroachment. We'll come to that conversation a bit later in the program.
Yeah, thank you very much, and good morning once again to the viewers. I think the last week we talked a little bit more about the processing of a mineral right for industrial minerals. We also touched a little bit on what industrial minerals are, and we just want to recap the importance of industrial minerals. You look all around you and all you see is industrial minerals, but people actually do not take notice of that. The buildings you are staying in as a result of industrial minerals. The sand that was used to build, the stones that were used, the cement that you saw are all part of industrial minerals. The tiles you are seeing in your rooms, the ceramic bowls you are using, our local cooking pots or grinding pots that you see that we call ayoa are all from industrial minerals. The WCs that you see, they are all made out of industrial minerals. So everything that you see around you, the fact that you don't see how they come about doesn't mean that they are not there. They are all as a result of mining. So we say that mining is very, very important to us, and for that matter, industrial minerals.
So there's a lot of places where these activities are permitted, but there are also places where they are not allowed. Talk to us about some of those things. I know for sure that the forest reserves would receive some protection. Sure.
Forest reserve are one place that we don't want people to do mining. I think in the President's Nation's advice, he mentioned that forests are no-go areas. So if you have an intention to go and do any mining activity in a forest reserve, it's not allowed. Forestry Commission has put out areas that are forest reserves, so we have them on our system. So even if you go to places like the northern part of Ghana where the forests are not as pronounced as we have in the southern parts, once Forestry Commission has earmarked the place for forest reserve, we will not do any mining in that. So if you bring your application and falls within any of such areas, it is not permitted. It will not be allowed. We are also not to go closer to water bodies, nor work in water bodies. Some people want to do some, what they call white sand in water bodies. So they will usually bring application. The moment it falls within that, we aren't going to allow it unless Water Resources Commission has expressly given permission that water body needs to be dredged so that the silts and others will be taken out for free flow of water. In that case, then we may allow it, but then without that we shan't.
You're saying that even the sand from these water bodies which are desilted can be used for industrial purposes?
Oh, it's sand, and sand is industrial minerals, but we are protecting the water bodies. And the institution that has the mandate to protect water bodies is the Water Resources Commission. So day in, day out, we decide whether some water body is being silted by natural conditions or not. So if they decide that this should happen, then they may give the rights for that to be done.
So you're saying that what happened, for example, at the Kole Lagoon and with the Odo River and all the desilting, the Minerals Commission is involved in all those things?
Not that specifically.
Okay.
But there are some major water bodies that might be silted up. So if you go to Volta region, for instance, there is a contract that has been given to one company to desilt that water body because it's silting up. So with that one, it's a special case that Water Resources Commissions want it to be done. So that's a special case. But you look at Odona one, it's usually more of dirt, rubbers and other things, polythene bags that are filled it up with some amount of sand. So that one can be taken out by the local authority. So that one permission is not needed from Minerals Commission. We also do not allow mining of sand and other things in the sea or the beaches. So all those areas are prohibited. Where there are sacred groups, we also do not allow it to go on because they are important places for our traditional authority.
So when we talk about galamsey and we talk about illegal mining, we usually overlook the fact that it's not just the prospecting for precious minerals, but some of these minerals can also be mined illegally as well. Is there a campaign to bring this awareness more to the fore so that people would know that you can also illegally mine sandstones and other things?
Yeah, there is a campaign. Even what we are doing right now is part of the campaign to educate people to stop illegal mining activity. There is a lot of illegal sand winning. Minerals Commission has a task force that includes the police and the military that go around to stop illegal sand winning. But then we need to have a paradigm shift when it comes to the orientation of people. So that's why we have undertaken this activity. It goes on even in the local dialects as well. We go to other radio stations and then speak in the local dialects, Twi, and then those that can speak Ewe and all the languages that we can go through. We take our staff there and then they talk to people. We just want everybody to have a paradigm shift when it comes to minerals. The fact that you see it behind your backyard doesn't mean you should just go in and then be mining without the necessary permits and the monitoring. Without the permits and monitoring, every activity is done haphazardly. So we need to control such activities. So we are actually on a nationwide campaign calling the citizenry so that we all bring our hands on board and then stop illegal mining activities, even in industrial minerals.
So what buffers are we talking about here? What are the boundaries when it comes to how close you can mine near a forest reserve, a beach, or a water body?
Yeah, the buffer has a purpose of protecting the natural resource that we want to protect. So we have various buffer. Ghana has a national buffer policy. There are things has been put into bill and then it will go to be passed. And that one, they actually have various categories for various natural bodies. But for Minerals Commission, currently we are sticking to about 100 meters from forests, 100 meters from water bodies, 100 meters from installations. If you come across an installation like a pylon, we are going as far as 300 meters from the pylon. So when you come to do a search at the Minerals Commission, and then we give you the search reports, it's actually written there the buffer we are giving to such facilities. To our roads, we are giving about 100 meters away from the roads. To buildings or settlements, it's usually for quarries that will be doing blasting. We are giving what we call safe distance of about 500 meters from residential facilities. So if you put in an application and we come for our pre-license and inspection, these are some of the things we'll be using. We go around the concession and also try to use technology, use our Google map to check whether even there is any facility within or close by, and then we will advise you to shift away from it if you are still interested. If you cannot shift away and the resource is too close, then we are not going to allow. In the same way as we are trying to manage the miners, we are also trying to say that people shouldn't be building closer to mining activities, especially when it comes to quarries. I think during the week and then last week, you heard the chief executive of MIF mentioning that very soon it's going to be very difficult for us to get some materials for building. Somebody will say, oh, is it even necessary? It's very necessary. Today you are in your building, it's a short building. In about 20, 50 years time to come, most of the short buildings will be pulled down. And we are going to have very high-rise buildings in our cities. Where are you going to get the materials to do that? These materials are not synthetic. They are natural minerals that we mine, sandstone, that we do mine for such activities. So if you are encroaching upon the lands of mineral right holders, you are not adhering to the safe distance of 500 meters, eventually you are saying that all these facilities should close down. And when they close down, we are not going to get those materials to undertake our developmental projects, our roads that you want, bridges that we want, how do we call it, this sea defense that we want. We are using quarry products to do all those things. So if we get too close to the quarries and then they close down, obviously when you get too close, we will now be looking at life and then somebody's profit. And when the two marry, obviously people will take life. So that in that case, we will be closing down the facility. And once they are closed down, we will be short of materials for our developmental agenda.
Okay, so I identify a number of issues with that particular report. And what stood out for me, first of all, is the fact that monitoring could be lacking. And secondly, land ownership could also be a factor. Because if the Minerals Commission is not there to ensure, to be on the ground to see to it that people are not getting close to these sites, then there's one problem. But if you also don't own the land and so you can't control who it is sold to or when, that's another problem.
Yeah, it's a big challenge. However, we'll look at monitoring from another angle, in the sense that when it comes to residential buildings, Minerals Commission has no mandate in giving permit to people to construct residential facilities. I think that mandate lies solely in the bosom of the local government. They are the ones who have the mandate to undertake what they call spatial planning.
But the Minerals Commission has a mandate to ensure that the buffers that you spoke about, for example, and the safe distances that you mentioned of 500 meters for quarry sites and whatever are not encroached upon. And perhaps that's the responsibility I'm referring to when I say monitoring. Because if you notice that someone is building within the 500-meter perimeter, then you have a responsibility to raise alarm for the person to be moved. But if that alarm does not come in time, and one house becomes 2 and 2 becomes 10, then there's a problem, because that's a whole residential association that would be fighting the Minerals Commission as against the one that initially set up within the 500-meter distance. Am I making...
You are making the point rightly, only that the responsibility is being shifted from the right place.
Okay.
The alarm is always raised. Even the miners themselves do raise the alarm. But then, who give the permits for that residential facility to be built? There also comes the issue of surface rights issue. The encouragement is that most quarry operators usually will buy a lot of the surface rights, but then 500 meters is quite a lot. Mm-hmm. So we are saying that the district assembly should also be up and doing, because they are the ones responsible to stop anybody to put up a residential facility around. If that is not stopped, then it becomes a very grave issue for all of us. We need to stop that. Our chiefs also need to come in. Our landowners need to come in as much as they will be needing their revenue from such sale of land. Some even go to the extent that the one that the miner has bought and paid the surface right for, also they still go in and sell it. You go to a place like Ablikuma, Emmanuel is there. The last time we got there, in the middle of the concession, closer to a pit, less than 50 meters, somebody builds in the night. They are in court as we speak. Minerals Commission cannot go and pull down that facility because it will be an illegal activity that we'll be doing. Our laws as Minerals Commission does not allow us to do that activity, to pull down facilities. But we all raise the alarm to the relevant institution. I think this also goes to the core of the issue that the district assemblies we know are also doing their best. We can't fault them too much. They are doing their best. But we, the citizenry and the owners of the land, should understand the strategic role of mining. Without this, eventually, we may be importing these minerals from outside, and it's going to cost us a lot.
So I'll ask two more on this particular issue. Would it help to put warning signs at vantage points on some of these sites so that people know, for example, that there's a quarry site, there's a winning site close to here, so you can't build? Would that help?
That will help. That is done by the miners. There are usually signs. Some even try to even fence their areas with wire mesh and other things to keep people
and people still
away.
Break through the mesh and come into
people will still break
the
through
sites
because
to build.
once the landowner says it's for him, he has a surface right. He decides that he wants to sell.
Okay, so then now let's talk about the landowner. Then local feel goes a long way. Shouldn't they also get something if the Minerals Commission says, okay, we've given a license for X company to mine? Give small to the landowners, keep them, happy until the mining activity is complete, and then perhaps the land goes back to them if they have indeed proven ownership.
Yeah, I think that one is catered for in the law, and most of them are actually. You remember I just said that some even buy the surface rights. Aside buying the surface rights, the law in Act 703 mandates every miner to compensate a landowner. So we have what we call land use compensation. In the law, we are having three types of compensations related to mining. You have the land use compensation, then we have crop compensation, and then we have the property compensation. So if you are going onto a particular land that you have some properties on it, then you need to negotiate with the owner of that property and then compensate that person as far as the mining activities will affect that facility. Then if there are crops also on it, you need to have a valuation of the crops and then also compensate the farmer or the owner of the crops for it. The major one is land use compensation. The fact that one has been given a mineral right does not mean that he has the surface right and therefore can just enter without having a negotiation with the landowner. So almost always the landowners are consulted, and then the miner will negotiate with the landowner and then pay the appropriate and fair and adequate land use compensating. So the local fuel is almost always available for them. The issue is locating who actually is the landowner, because in Ghana we know the land tenure system and the land ownership system. We have the individuals, we have the families, we have the stools, and then we have state lands. So the miner needs to identify who the landowner is. Sometimes there is an issue where the miner might have seen a family member supposedly being the owner, but then they will tell you the particular one you saw is not the rightful person. And in that case, the miner goes on and then we'll still have to negotiate with the rightful person. So it takes even much longer time for the miner to be able to locate who actually the land belongs to.
So there are many players on the table now. Minerals Commission has to work in partnership with district assemblies, with those who issue permits for building and rights of ownership and all that. So because it still persists, and because now we are being told there's a threat of importing stones, I don't even want to imagine how much that would even weigh per container. Imagine going on a site and say, I want 1 container of stones from one country or the other. Sanctions, when all else fail and the laws are not being obeyed, fines and punishments are imposed. Where are those?
Yeah, I think I've not actually read the district assembly bylaws when it comes to sanctions with somebody encroaching on a mining land. But I want to believe that there are sanctions within the district assembly laws where if you are building without a permit, and then there should be some form of
But
sanctions.
the caveat is without a permit.
Without a permit.
If the person has a permit, you don't have a case.
Yeah,
but if they don't have
if the person have a permit, then you wouldn't have a case. So that's why we are also calling on the district assemblies, the local governments. There are so many mineral resources, especially industrial mineral resources, within the various district assemblies. And then we also want it to be strategically reserved for developmental purposes. So we are actually calling out for consensus and then understanding of the strategic importance of such mineral resources for the nation. So assemblies should be much more proactive, in as much as we are also much proactive in bringing this to the fore for discussions and then better solutions to that.
When it comes to encroachment, we know that at worst, one of the worst case scenarios is it denies us access to the material being mined. What other dangers do encroachers expose themselves to when they veer into the space reserved for the mining operations?
Yeah, I think mining is one of the most risky jobs in the world, and I think it has been classified as one of the most hazardous industries in the world. So once you get closer without the necessary protective equipment, necessary protection that is needed, then you are actually exposing yourself to life-threatening activities. If you get too close to typically a quarry, then you are getting the risks of being struck by a fly rock. And when we talk about fly rock, when we blast, there are some pieces of rocks that are so light that they can fly to certain distances. And research has shown that if you stay away about 500 meters, such fly rocks would have fallen down and then wouldn't hit anybody without that area. So once you get too close to it, you are actually exposing yourself to such a risk. Then also we have these vibrations that go on when there are blasting. The closer you get to the point of blasting, then you will be getting closer to the vibrations. If buildings are too close to such facilities and then we blast, the vibrations will be shaking your buildings and eventually giving you cracks. You wouldn't want to be putting the blame on an existing quarry that was there, and then you decided to put your facility there. We are also having what we call air blast. Once the blast takes on or goes on, there is some mechanism in the air that you hear very loud sound. We call it air blast. It's not nice to stay within that vicinity. We'll also be having what we call the dust. If there is a blast, there is the dust that is sent into the air. It has some distance it will take before this particulate matter will settle. So if you get into this vicinity, then you are exposing yourself to all these hazards and then the risks. So because of that, that's why that safe distance has been established by research, said that people shouldn't come closer. So we are also using this medium to tell people, don't get closer. If somebody is selling a land to you that is closer to a quarry or a mining facility, it will be in your interest and in your health not to get closer.
Okay, I'm going to put these two in one so that we can get to our next conversation, which would be on road crashes. And I just want to find out, you've mentioned encroachment, you've mentioned land ownership being some of the challenges for mining industrial minerals. Are there others? And then what are the efforts to recover or reclaim the land once these activities are concluded?
Yeah, the others that we want to talk about, we continue to talk about the illegality, we continue to talk about stakeholder engagement, that we want everybody to get involved, understand what mining is and the risks that are involved therein, so that we don't get too close to facilities that are meant for mining. When it comes to closure of mines, we are talking about when the mining is coming to an end. We expect the miners to follow up with their closure plans and then with their environmental management plans that they deposited with Environmental Protection Agency. They follow it religiously and then get the place back to useful purpose, so that at the end of the mining cycle, we can still have something purposeful to use the land for.
Mr. Bukari, once again, another very insightful conversation. Thank you for being a part of our breakfast this morning. Mr. Eric Emmanuel Bukari is Assistant Manager, Small Scale and Industrial Minerals at the Minerals Commission. They've been explaining industrial mining processes to us from last week. We learned what industrial minerals are. This week, we've learned some of the reasons why you shouldn't encroach on industrial mining sites and why you need to keep a safe distance. The Minerals Commission continues to monitor these developments because we don't want to start importing stones from X country. So let's all play by the rules. And as we play by the rules, we have